Oh, hello. As we approach the end of the school year, I know many of us are thinking, thank goodness I don't have to do calculus anymore. Well, that's not the case. You see, there are so many professions that involve calculus every single day, and today I'm just going to give you a small sample size of a few of the professions that involve calculus. Let's go. Although calculus is used in a lot of different fields, the most common one is the STEM field, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. Today, I'm going to be interviewing my mom, who's a physical therapist, to get more information on my mom. Thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Where did you originally study physical therapy at?
I studied at Ithaca College in upstate New York.
And how do you feel that they initially prepared you through calculus and other STEM-based things to be a good physical therapist?
I feel it definitely prepared me both from a fundamental standpoint with math, physics, anatomy, of course. I also studied biomechanics, kinesiology, all those things. And then I also did hands-on training for about a year in the Bronx under Albert Einstein and Bronx Municipal Hospital.
All right, and how do you use calculus in your job today?
So it's not like I think, oh, I'm doing calculus now, but a lot of the things kind of are used without us really knowing it. A lot of it's done for us based on equations that are in machines that we don't really have to think about. They're preset per se. What I mean is anybody that has undergone, an ACL repair may or may not have had the ability to do some isokinetic strengthening on a machine, which will measure their peak force and will also take them through variations of different speeds. And that will create a graph based on their peak muscle strength at certain forces. So that's one issue. I think you had some experience with that with your elbow post-surgery. Another aspect that we use is, I would say, for a modality standpoint, and what that means is things that make people feel better or expedite healing, such as electric stimulation. That's used for decreasing pain, decreasing swelling, increasing circulation, but it's also used for increasing strength. So what can one device, how does it do that? Well, it has some preset functions in, but all those preset functions are based on different wavelengths, frequencies, rates, and durations. So if you want a stronger electric charge to decrease the pain and block the neuroreceptors in your brain, then you're going to need a longer, wavelength or pulse width. So all those things are now kind of preset and people just have to hit a button, but physical therapists have bigger machines where they can customize that, and then certain placement on muscles in addition will kind of help relieve that. Another modality that we kind of take for granted is what's called a traction machine. If anybody has had neck or back pain, if you go to a physical therapist, sometimes they will have a cervical traction unit or a lumbar traction unit, and basically it will distract the spine and the therapist can determine the angle, the position of the patient, and then also how much force do we want that to create to pull and distract and take a load off the spine in order to bring relief. And that's all based on, what's their diagnosis, what's the position, what kind of angle will help. If someone has a herniated disc, it's one position, certain amount of force. So there's a lot of variables that you have to know. Another aspect of physical therapy, after someone has a knee replacement, some surgeons believe in it, some don't, what's called a continuous CPM machine, which it just goes through the motion and it just keeps stretching the knee, and you can change the rate, the range of motion, the force, all that good stuff. Another example would be if someone does a lot of research. So one aspect of physical therapy is just studying how people walk, gait analysis. So There's certain walking tests where you have to, and it will, have equations for acceleration, velocity, how much can they walk distance-wise, and 6-minute test, a 2-minute test. And then there's, as far as research, there's different sensors and pads. How much force is somebody putting on this side of their foot, that side of the foot? That could be contributing to pain. So there's a lot of different things, and that will also have to do with how we would prescribe an orthotic for someone, because a lot of times people's problems come from their feet. So there's a lot of different things, but that's just some, for example.
Would you recommend the professional physical therapy to anyone out here?
Absolutely. People are living longer, and they're gonna have more pain, they can't function. So basically we just want to keep people functioning at their highest level.
Awesome. Thank you for your time today.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Wow.
You're welcome.
I never realized physical therapists really use that much calculus. Well, now we're going to take it to a whole different level as we interview a nuclear engineer. Let's go. All right, so now I'm here with Sam Hansel. Thank you for being here, and what was your job?
So I'm a Cedar Crest grad. I did take academic courses to try and go to college, but ended up when I was 17 years old, back in 1976, that's when I graduated. And instead of going to college, I ended up enlisting for the U.S. Navy nuclear power program. So to be in the Navy nuclear power program, which is high tech, you need a lot of geometry, calculus. So fortunately, again, I did take I think pre-calc at Cedar Crest, then also did some additional 2 years in the Navy in a college environment before I could even operate or work at a nuclear power plant. So essentially, if I didn't have calculus, 1, 2, sometimes a 3, you wouldn't be able to effectively understand and perform well operating a nuclear power plant. So in the Navy, the first 2 years was all training, including higher math. Again, like we did use calculus for everything we do. So back in 1976, 1980 time frame, we didn't have good calculators or computers. So we had slide rules. So even though we needed to know calculus, we used a slide rule to actually do different calculations, whether as far as like for a nuclear power plant, how many neutrons are in the reactor core that are going to interact with uranium, which is how nuclear power works. And typically, there are different isotopes of uranium. Uranium-235 is what the Navy used in our nuclear power plants, and so you're talking about millions of interactions in a second to basically create enough heat when a neutron basically is absorbed by uranium-235. It goes what they call fission, and then the fission basically is release of a lot of heat based on many fission events happening in a period of time in a steel reactor vessel. It's called. Typically they're anywhere from depending on the size of it, anywhere from 2 inches of stainless steel, and it can be as much as a foot of stainless steel, just to make sure that everything inside the reactor vessel stays inside the reactor vessel and does not break the vessel if there's too much fission going on, which would cause things to pressurize the water to a point where it might overheat, and that's one of the things that 3 Mile Island lost found out when they had their accident. They essentially had it down out of control reactor, and it melted major components, and that's when they had the nuclear releases and damaged the reactor core itself. Broke basically caused the fuel to melt and give off a lot of radiation. So again, so from my standpoint, 2 years of high math, and again starting out statistics, Calc 1, Calc 2 type level courses, and then just 2 years on what it takes to have in this case I was on a submarine, and the submarine had a nuclear reactor and vessel, not nearly as big as what TMI was, of course, but just probably about the size of a large garbage can is what the reactor size was in the submarine, because there wasn't much room to have something that was greater than that. So the submarine, that's what basically allowed the submarine to operate underwater for years if you had to get food. So the reactor itself, we had to know all the thermodynamic aspects of it. Essentially, it was a vessel that was basically had steam in it up to about 1,000 pounds pressure, and then that pressure would create steam, and the steam was used to actually go through turbines, and then the turbines basically would propel the submarine, and also the turbines can be used to make electricity and other vital things inside a submarine that makes it self-contained. So 2 years of fundamentals, and then took about a year and a half. After the 2-year fundamental courses, we actually what they have called nuclear prototypes. So they have smaller nuclear prototypes that are similar to the reactors on the submarine. I ended up going to Windsor, Connecticut. They had basically a nuclear power plant there, and so that's where we basically initially learned how to run the plant, operate it, and control it so it would do everything it needed to do and would not go out of control like happened at TMI. So that was about it was a 1-year training session, basically 6 days a week. Again, and we operated the small nuclear power plant in this case, up in Connecticut. And then once we passed all the tests to do that, then I ended up going down to Norfolk, Virginia, and I was on a submarine. It's called the 69. The hull number was 691. It was the Memphis, and they named it after states. So it was the USS Memphis, and I basically operated the nuclear reactor and turbines for 4 years in the Navy. 4 years in the Navy. In the Navy. So some of the highlights, when we would leave Norfolk, we were able to basically stay underwater for at one time about 60-70 days straight. We essentially went around the world without coming up, and that was only able to do that by using calculus, having the nuclear reactor operate properly and allow us to basically do everything that we need to do very quiet under the water where no one could detect us unless there was another submarine like a Russian submarine that would maybe try and understand what we were doing, and that was our big opposition on the water was Russian submarines, and we would track them and they would try and track us, but we at that time were much better, and that was what allowed us just again using calculus to do things to have a better operation in the U.S. nuclear Navy. So then as far as the training goes, then we had to always qualify every year to make sure that we stayed proficient in all the mathematics, geometry, and physics, and then also calculus. We had to know everything, which we would get what they called a theory test, where that would be basically make sure that we could go through equations with calculus and get the proper answers to make sure that we knew how to do the job, and if we have certain data, that we knew what the data meant. So that's essentially why it was important for me to know calculus. And again, it was something that we would always be tested on routinely to make sure that we didn't lose our knowledge. And again, as far as being in the Navy goes, in the nuclear power program, I wouldn't have made it if I didn't have the ability and then take calculus and understand it and use it to safely operate the nuclear power plant on a submarine.
Awesome. Thank you for your time and thank you for sharing.
Wow.
Okay.
First off, I want to say thank you to Mr. Hansel for your service, and thank you for breaking down everything so in depth. Next, we're going to be interviewing a college student who's currently studying mechanical engineering and seeing how calculus has affected him. TJ Moore is a mechanical engineer major. TJ, thank you for being here, and where do you study mechanical engineering at?
At Lehigh University.
And how do you use calculus to help with these skills?
There's a bunch of different theorems. For example, in our strength of materials class that I took last semester, there's a handful of theorems that use surface integrals and partial derivatives in order to calculate the slope and deflection of different beams.
And would you recommend mechanical engineering to anyone listening out here?
Definitely pay attention in your math classes, because any other class you take after that is going to be a lot more math than you think.
All right, thank you for spending the time to talk to me today, and you have a good night. Jeez. After doing this documentary, it really opened my eyes about how many jobs really use calculus and how important it really is. I hope everyone here now sees that calculus is an important part of higher education, and I hope everyone learned from this. Thank you. Have a great day.